Hello guys and welcome back. In this video I wanted to talk about the geometry data in Houdini, points, vertices, edges, and primitives, and how we can process and manipulate that data. So I'm going to create a geometry node first. I'm going to dive inside by double clicking, then delete this node, and I'm going to create a sphere. So hit tab, type in sphere, and hit enter. I'm going to change this type from primitive to polygon. And you can see now it's made of triangles, and the selection mode now allows me to select these faces. Okay, I can also right click here and change it to points. You can see now where we can select points from this geometry, and I can also right click and change it to edge. Now we select the edge, and we can go back to primitives. Okay, and what primitives is basically the polygon geometry in other applications. Okay, and what point is what it maps to is basically vertices in other application. And in Houdini there is points, edges, primitive, vertices, and all we have to worry about is points. Now there is vertices in Houdini, but we're most likely 99% of the time we're going to be working with points, and we're going to be also working with primitives, which is polygon. Okay, now we can view all this data if we by middle clicking on the node, and this will give us the properties, all the properties available in Houdini for that node. So it has 42 points, 80 primitives, 240 vertices, and 80 polygons. And all what we have to worry about is 42 and primitives. Okay, we're going to ignore that. It's very rare that we're going to be working with primitives. And we can click this point here, and that will show all the points in the mesh. Cool. Now let's say we want to delete everything but keep the geometry. This is something very different compared to all the other apps that you may be familiar with, like Maya or 3ds Max. You cannot have points. You cannot have points without creating geometries. If you need points, those will become particles. So in other apps, I mean. So let me create an add node, and this allows me to process the data and delete the geometry but keep the points. So I'm going to click that, delete geometry but keep points. And you can see we only have points, and these are actually valid data for Houdini. This is what we're going to be working with most of the time. Now these points here are exactly the same points that you're going to create with a particle sim. There's only points in Houdini. There's no specific points to particles or other contexts. There's only points. And so we can take these guys. We can add a jitter, for example, and this will just randomize the points. We can increase the amount of that jitter. We can go back to the first input and increase the point, increase the resolution. You can see we have more primitives, and then that will result in more points, and now we're jittering those points. Now in terms of the polygons or primitives, these guys cannot exist without the points. You need at least 2 points to describe a primitive. Now let me select couple and hit tab, and we have to do this in the viewport. So I'm going to hit tab in the viewport and type in blast and hit enter, and this will delete all those selected polygons. Now this is the blast node. I'm going to check this box here that says delete non-selected, and that will invert. Now we're left with four primitives from that geometry, and if we run it through the add node, it still delete the geometry but kept the points that are creating these guys. Now let's create a line, for example. And I'm gonna it made a line pointing upward. I'm gonna increase the number of points. I want more points in this line. Now this would resemble to an edge in other applications. Okay, this is an edge, it's not a polygon or anything. Well, in Houdini it's a primitive. All this is one primitive. Now that primitive has 14 points. Okay, and there is basically no real concept of edge. An edge is that can only exist between 2 points. Now we can select, I can do this, I can right click, select the edge, select it there, and hit the T key on the viewport, press T key, and that will create an edit node. You can move the geometry if you want to. And basically all I wanted to explain in this video is that in Houdini there is points and primitives, and that's it. Now when you middle click, you will see all the data available for that geometry. Now you can see we have point attributes here, point attrs. It says P. What P is the position of these points, and that's what is available in this mesh. Now in other classic 3D applications, you have access to position, normals, and UVs. Those are the basic, or all the attributes that you have access to. If you need to create new type of data or store new data, it will be a vertex attribute, for example. In Houdini, this concept is much more advanced, and points can have any number of attributes, and primitives can have any number of attributes as well. So let's create a facet node, and this is basically a node that I'm going to use to compute the normals on the mesh, because right now if I middle click, you see there is only position. I don't have any normals on the mesh. So I'm going to select and view this facet node and tick on post compute normals. Now if I middle click, you can see it added a normal attribute. Along with these options, you can view points and you can view normals. So if I click, you can see we have normals on the points. Great. Now, what if we wanted to create a new attribute? And this is something we're going to be doing as well. So I'm going to create a create attribute node. I'm going to connect that, and I want to create a new attribute called my attribute. It's a point attribute. Its type of float. It's not a vector, it's not a color, for example, it's a black and white map. And I'm gonna give it a value of 1. Okay, so I created a class, a point attribute. It's called my attribute, and if I middle click now, you can see it's here. It's float, and these guys are vectors because it's an XYZ information. Now if I right click in here, or actually let's go back. If I right click and go spreadsheet, this is going to open a, where is it? It's behind this window. Okay, so if I right click and open the spreadsheet, the geometry spreadsheet, this is going to show me a list of all the points available and their attributes and their values. So here you can see we're viewing the points. We can view vertices, we can view primitives, and we can view detail. Now we don't have to worry about all these guys. We're going to focus about points at this moment. You can see this is the position, and each point has a P attribute that tells it the position of that point. Now if we go down here and right click and open the spreadsheet, one second, it's behind. Cool. So this is the spreadsheet. You can see here, geometry spreadsheet, attribute create 1, and we're viewing the data at this point. Now, by the time we get here, we've created a new normal attribute. You can see it here, and we have our attributes stored on these points as well. And in Houdini, we can create any attribute, any data on these points, and use them to do all kinds of processing. For example, let me create this. Let me create a tube. Increase the height. Okay, and I'm going to template this. I want to see where the sphere is. So I have my tube here, and I'm going to move it to the side. I'm going to increase the details on this. Cool. And I'm going to give these guys a color. So a color is basically an attribute that has that we can view in the viewport. So I'm going to create a color node, and this is going to create an attribute called CD, and that's what Houdini uses by default for the color. I'm going to give this a red color, and for this guy I'm going to give it a blue color. So we have two separate objects, red and green. I'm going to create an attribute transfer, and what this allows me to do is we can transfer data between nearby objects. So I'm going to connect the sphere first and the attribute transfer in the tube second. Okay, and now you can see the object is completely green because we're affecting all the points by the color of that tube. Now in this attribute transfer, I'm going to go under the condition. I'm going to reduce the distance threshold, and this will will only pick the nearby points and change them. Now if I template the tube, you can see we're only transferring the green color to the nearby points, and this is just copying, transferring attributes between points. Now let's say we don't have any polygons, we don't have any primitives. I'm going to create an add node, so hit tab, create an add, and this allows me to delete the geometry, so I'm going to do that. Okay, let's copy this node and paste it on the tube as well. I wanted to change this tube to be only points. Okay, let's take a look at the result. You can see it still works because we're only working with points. We don't have to have all the primitives. If we want to process or work with points, we can easily do that. So the takeaway from this video is that Houdini has primitives and points. Primitives are what you are used to in other application to be polygons, for example, and there is points. Points can have attributes, and you can create any attributes. By default there is only P. You can add normals, and you can create any kinds of data. You can transfer data between geometries and things like that. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.